NVIDIA GT210s, the tiny slide of silicone that more office power PC than dreams gaming. I ignored this card for years because honestly, it screamed bucket spreadsheet escalator. But today, we're cracking open this late 2000s legend to see why it's sold like a hotcake despite being slower than Monday morning. This thing live in pre-built towers from the Best Buy to Craigslist, while pushing dual monitors, decorating videos, and pretend to be a gaming update. With the terms of marketing, driver just work. All the world cheapest HDMI ports. Let's dig into the GT210s and find out how pain turned into popularities. Released back in the late 2009, this CPU had one of the most infamous revelations in NVIDIA histories. And even after more than a decade, the pain still lingered. At launch, the GT210s were marketed as the entry level display adapters, the cheapest NVIDIA had to offer. Sitting right next to is a long-forgotten siblings, the GT220. But even then, reviewers were brutally honest. This thing would heavy cut down compared to every other cards, including the 220. It would only recommend for basic desktop use or running multiplayer monitors because gaming studies was basically a slideshow. Most titles at the time struggled to even hit 30 FPS. The GPU I got here is the Asus G4 GT210 Silent Low Profile V2. And yeah, it's not fancy, but trust me, this thing is a straight up relic from NVIDIA bucket lineups. Just like a lot of cards from that era, the GT210s wasn't really new. It was basically a rebranded chip. The good old GT280S, the same silicon used the G4 8400GS, back from 2007. And NVIDIA, being NVIDIA, they didn't stop there. Over the years, the insect GPU got re-released under a bunch of different names: 205, 310s, 350, 405, 505. Basically the same card, just with a slightly higher clock speed and a new sticker on the box. To be fair, this card would never mean for gaming. Its real job was video playback and display output. The GT210 came with Pure Video HD Gen 4. Its one saving grace back was hardware HD video decoding, and believe it or not, playing 1080p smoothly in 2009 was a huge flake. I mean, 1080p back then was basically what 4K is today. A luxury features that make you feel like you were living in the futures. Over time, the GT220s quietly disappeared, but somehow the GT210s just keep going. Demand stayed surprisingly high for nearly a decade, even though performance-wise, it's worth a complete potatoes. Despite the best review and all the memes, this card managed to outline multiple GPU generations, providing that sometimes being cheap and just good enough can keep you alive way longer than the spec. Alright, so the cards I got here is the Asus GT210 Silence, and as the name suggests, yeah, it's completely silent. There's no fan on this thing at all, which means zero noise, but also not a lot of cooling. Inside, it's rocking the GT280 GPU built on the TSMC 14nm Progress, packed with 16 shaders, 8 TMUs, 4 ROPs, running at a base clock of 589 MHz. It's got a whole 512 MB of DDR3 VRAMs, which honestly feel like a pocket change by today's standards, and it's all running on a 64-bit burst with a TDP of only 31 watts. Super power efficient, but let's be real, if I'm plugging this into a desktop, it's not exactly chasing the efficiency here. For outputs, it's surprisingly well equipped for our own cards. We got the HDMI and DVI, which can still handle a lot of older monitors. There used to be a VGA port, but yeah, that's one long gone, probably disappeared along with the I/O brackets somewhere in its 10 years jersey. Anyways, that's about for the hardware sides. Now let's see what little Fossil can actually do in 2025. I'm not expecting much, but hey, maybe it will surprise us, or at least try not to disappoint. Even though this GPU still look pretty clean on the outsides, I have no idea if anyone have bothered us to reapply the thermal paste or give a proper cleanup over the years. So, just to be safe, I went ahead and did it myself. fresh paints, clean heatsinks, ready to roll. Now, let's talk about the test pen and we'll be running this thing on. We got an X99 OEM motherboard, a Xeon 1620 V4, 16GB of RAM, and a 1TB SSD. A solid setup to make sure this tiny GPU get every chance to shine. Alright, time for the fun part. Let's find up the Eugene Heaven benchmark and see what kind of performance this old GT210 can still deliver. Running the GT210 to the Heaven benchmark 4.0 at 1080p low settings, we got an average of 6.3 FPS, a score of 159 with a low around 4 FPS and a peak just under 10 FPS. Yeah, it's slow, painfully slow, but considering this fanless card only had the 16 CUDA core and 512MB of DDR3, it's honestly impressive. Even finished the test. Clearly, this GPU was never meant for gaming, but watching it push through the modern benchmark feel like seeing a relic from other times still refusing to give up. Since the GPUs only support DirectX 10, we're pretty much limited to other titles. So, I fired up Half-Life at Full HD to see what it could do. And honestly, not bad at all. The games run between 30 to 35 FPS constantly with no frame drop and surprisingly clear visual. Everything ran smoothly. And for once, I wasn't just target practice for the enemies. Of course, this is one of the lightest games you can throw at it. But still, it's kinda nice seeing the action GT210 handle a classic like it was made for it. Next up, we are testing League of Legends. Of course, everything set low settings at Full HD. And man, this pool GT210 is giving it everything it's got. Running at 98% load the whole time. FPS hovers around 35, sometimes touching 40 while moving around. But during big time fights, it dropped down to about 30 FPS. For an esports titles, you really want a stable 60 FPS to stay competitive. So yeah, hitting barely half of that on such a lightweight games isn't great. Honestly, if you're planning to play League seriously, you might want to stay far away from this GPU. Moving on to the next game, Left 4 Dead, which actually came out a year before this GPU did. And honestly, my experience didn't get any better. The moment the game starts, it's really lagging like crazy. FPS barely ever went to above 20. Every zombie felt like it was moving in slow motions and not in a cinematic way. If you really want to play this game smoothly, you have to drop the resolutions down to 720p. Or better yet, just drop the GPU altogether. Trust me, your senses will thank you. Let's throw in one more game, Minecraft. Because why not? Running a 720p HD with a render distance set to 8 chunks and no shaders, the GT210 managed around 35 to 40 FPS while was exploring. It's not exactly smooth, but hey, it's playable. Kind of. For such a lightweight games, that's still pretty underwhelming. The experience is fine if you're just building quietly, but if you want anything more, I say skip this card entirely. Grab the GT630s or the GT730s instead. It will give you the way better performance for just a few bucks more. And now, we reach the game that's completely broke this GPU, GTA 5. Even after dropping the resolutions all the way down to 800x600, this poor thing could barely muster a single-digit frame rate. I'm not exaggerating, it's basically a slideshow. The moment I load into the cities, my eyes immediately beg me to stop. It might actually be the first time I ever seen GTA 5 look this bad at this point. There's no talking about the optimizations. Even if you somehow gain another 5 or 6 FPS, you'll still just be staring at a moving PowerPoint. The GT210 didn't struggle here. It's completely surrendered after testing everything. All I got from this GPU was a headache. Literally, I never test a graphic card that performs this badly. Almost every single game I tried was unplayable, even the ones considered lightweight today. The GT210 truly identifies the word struggle. Anyways, that is for today's videos. If you enjoy watching this action relic surfers, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more Buckets GPU experiments. See you in the next one.